Subdomain versus subfolder, which one is better for SEO? This is something that has been debated in the community for years, but generally speaking, you're going to want to use a subfolder over a subdomain to preserve SEO equity. What that means is that SEO equity, meaning links, internal links, external links, just overall crawl budget assigned from Google, will pass better to a folder on your website as opposed to a subdomain. For example, let's say on your agency website you have services pages. As opposed to setting up a services.yourwebsite subdomain, you just set up folders. That would be services, and then underneath that services folder you could add things like keyword research or SEO, etc. That could be the same as products on an e-commerce website, right? When you'd want to use a subdomain is when you're going after something a lot more robust. So for context, using that same example, our agency Webbers a couple of years ago decided that we want to launch a training platform. So we had the option, either host the training platform on a training subfolder on the website and then list those trainings underneath that subfolder, which would kind of clog up the website, kind of ruin the flow, but would pass more ranking SEO equity to those pages, hypothetically. But instead we set up a training subdomain. And the reason why we did this was because that was basically a website within a website. So if you're setting up something that's very robust, that has a lot of pages, that's also not overly relevant to what the root domain is. So again, pivoting to training is a little bit different than offering training services. So in terms of SEO equity, it wasn't necessarily the same relevancy that would be on the root domain as it would be on that training subdomain. So we wanted to actually get that content off, and as opposed to setting up a brand new website, we wanted to preserve some of the equity of our agency website because it had a lot of links, very powerful website that we knew would pass equity to that subdomain. So in terms of ranking power, subfolders have been shown to rank better than a subdomain. However, if it's a lot of content, if it's robust, if it's something that you want to separate from the website without setting up an entirely new domain, then you'd want to use a subdomain. And honestly, the subdomain for us ranked really well, even though we blocked a lot of the pages because we didn't want them to rank because those trainings were blocked. So the equity will still pass to a subdomain. But I almost just think from a user experience too, which is really important to consider as well, that subfolders just perform a lot better with the user, because if you redirect them to a subdomain, it can be a little bit confusing navigation wise, and also for Google as well to try and follow a user to go from a root domain, subdomain back to a root domain. So the point is that you're going to want to use a subdomain where you're basically setting up an entirely different website, because then you can change the design of the website. You can still maintain some of the equity, but users and search engines both know that that website is clearly different and has a different purpose if it's on a subdomain, whereas a subfolder, it should basically just be a part of the website that the user and search engines are naturally passing through to. And then also to just touch on the final part of this would be when to set up a microsite or a completely new domain. And that would be, again, if it's a completely different business, or another example is, so we're launching a book too. So we're setting up a microsite on a completely new domain for the book because we want people to go directly to that traffic, but then we're going to redirect that new website back into the root website. So we're basically using it kind of as a simpler call to action to go to that website. That'll be just a couple pages about the book, and then eventually redirect that back into the website. So there's three options. You either set up a new website that will have no equity, no ranking power. You use subfolders if it's hyper relevant to the business and you want people to naturally pass through to it. That will have the most SEO equity. Or you can set up a subdomain when you want to have a different experience for your visitors, still pass SEO equity, probably not as much as subfolders, but realistically a subdomain is best for when you want a completely different experience for your visitors, and then search engines can crawl and understand that as well. So in my opinion, if it's something that you want to rank, if it's a core service page, if it's something core to that business, use a subfolder. But if it's a completely different experience and a completely different service line or product line than you're offering, then you're probably going to want to go with a subdomain. So as always, if you guys have any questions, drop them in Slack. I'm going to do my best to do more of these videos. I'll see you guys in the next one.